No. Listen, nobody lived there more than me. You can ask people that our family. You can ask people that are partakers of our family that weren't born in our family. There's like a funny thing. Oh, the Henrys are always right. Right? So no one more than me thought the greatest thing to do was to be right. And I felt great shame at the prospect of not being right. To the degree that you rather die and you fight. Listen, that's not a place born from life. Do you see it?
I like what Jesus told a Pharisee. He says, you claim to see. They said, are you saying that we're blind? He says, no, because you claim to see, you remain in your sin. You remain separated from me because you claim to know.
Yes.
Now, that should speak to everybody.
Yep. And that's exactly what we're talking about.
Don't hang on to the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
That's right.
Look to me for the truth.
Yeah. That's one of the first things God come and said to me, and this was, some people think, oh, no big deal. But you didn't grow up thinking, I'm always going to be right. Mm-hmm. When God come and said to me, take everything you think you know and crumple it up in a ball and go throw it in the garbage can, I don't think you realize how painful that was to me. Because I had already concluded, I'm right. And I know it all. And no one's going to tell me nothing. Right? I mean, you can ask my mom. When I was 10 years old, I would tell the principals and the teachers that they were stupid. They didn't know what they were talking about. I just would. I thought they were all dumb. These people don't know what's going on. I seriously thought that from like a very young age. These people are out of the loop. I'm not listening to them. Right? And so, man, when God come and said, take everything you think you know and crumple it up in a ball and throw it in the garbage can. Oh, man. It was like what Hebrews says when it says it can be grievous for a time when your belief has been chastised.
Yes.
It don't always feel nice, right? But now I've grown out of that where I rejoice every time that I can be confronted with something that isn't the truth. Right? Or that isn't born from life. Glory to, that means liberty's coming. I mean, how can we be upset about liberty coming? It says the truth shall make you free. Well, if you get ashamed every time the truth comes, how are you ever going to be free? Do you see what I'm saying? Does everybody understand that? One of the most powerful things that grace does is it comes and settles your beauty and your value and your worth. And it puts a period at the end of it and it closes the book. It's not debatable anymore.
Right.
So now, you're free to actually sit and talk with God about things that come out of your heart and things that you believe and things that torment. Then you can actually get free. Glory to God. Right? We're so busy trying to cover ourselves up. No. I mean, I did it with the intense thing. For the longest time, I got to prove the intensity is good. Yeah. And I got to get everybody to agree that it's good. Yeah. And if they don't agree that it's good, what's wrong with them? Do you see how that works? Do you see how that would, how was that working out for me? Guess what? I wasn't getting free. And it wasn't causing me to love people. I promise you that. And it wasn't causing me to love myself. You're left with one thing. Either there's something wrong with them or there's something wrong with you. Neither one of those feels nice. And you'll bounce back and forth. Back and forth, back and forth. Right? But then you realize there's nothing wrong with them and there's nothing wrong with me. It's a matter of life and death, not a matter of personhood. It's a matter of beliefs that are separated from people. Whatever you believe, I hate to break it to you, you ain't the father of it. Something else has fathered that belief in you. Now, you may have adopted it as your own, but you ain't the source of it. And so don't confuse who you are with what you believe. Right? That's one of the most valuable things I learned in philosophy class. Was the ability to throw ideas on the board and scrutinize them. And seeing them as separate from the people. Now, that doesn't always mean that I let other people or lead them into the place where they see that's what I'm doing very easily. Sometimes I put people on the defensive. And that's not the intent, but I'm still ironing that out. But I don't feel ashamed because it's being ironed out. Do you see what I'm saying? I can look at the thing and say, you know what? The way that I present that actually could put somebody on the defensive. And even though my intent is to separate them from what they're believing, I could put them on the defensive so much that they confuse who they are with what they're believing. And they think that I'm confusing them. Right? And then that creates an environment where we can't actually have the conversation that I want to have. Now, I don't feel any shame about that. I can look at that and say, you know what? Maybe that isn't born from life. And maybe I can talk with God. And maybe I can find myself in situations not putting people on the defensive. Right? And allowing them to just consider thoughts instead of them feeling like they have to defend thoughts. Right? Do There's a big difference between a person considering a thought and a person thinking they have to defend a thought. And if you confuse your thoughts for who you are, you're going to be left trying to defend thoughts instead of considering thoughts.
Right.
And then if I come at them about their thoughts in a way that makes it personal, then that puts them in the place where they're defending thoughts instead of considering thoughts.
Sure.
Right?
Right.
Do you see that?
Yeah. One of the most freeing things that I think we've ever said in this group is that we should not believe everything we think,
Yeah.
and to just consider that. I mean, I'm 66 years old. I've never heard that before, but that is such a powerful statement, because you start to think, well, maybe what I'm thinking isn't right, and it goes to everything that we've talked about so far.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful thing to say, well, that may be not right, but what is right?
That's right.
Yeah, and then sit with Jesus about that.
That's right. And you've read a lot of really smart people's books.
Yeah.
And none of them ever figured that out.
Never. Never.
I mean, Jay, you're probably like
Never.
in the top 1% of, reading books about various topics, right? And they never get you there,
No.
right? They don't
Yeah.
ever get you there,
Yeah.
right?
It's like you said, there's a million people out there pointing this is the way,
Yeah.
and there's only one way.
Yeah.
And when we come to that, we know the truth.
It's a beautiful thing when you can sit and think of, why do you believe what you believe?
You bet.
And when you consider what comes out of you without feeling ashamed.
Yeah.
The gospel is actually designed to take you there,
Mm.
right? Because if you freak out every time you start considering a thing, how you ever gonna be free,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And it used to be, if I would have considered that thought, I would have felt so much shame, because I would have thought, well, there Greg goes again. He's too much for people. Just the way that he is, it just brings people pain. There he goes again. Let me just separate myself from the people. You see how then I try to circumvent the whole system by removing myself.
Sure.
But now the gospel comes and I don't feel ashamed. And so I can look at, you know what? This passion is not a bad thing. But you know what? There's times where I could put somebody on the defensive, and that's not what I'm trying to do. Right? And maybe that's a hindrance in the dynamic. And if all you ever want is for the message to be clear, I actually pray every day for God to help me make the message clear. Every day I pray for that. Lord, help me make the message clear. Well, one of the ways you make it unclear is by putting up people on the defensive when you don't have to.
That's right.
Now, God can still work with that, so don't misunderstand me. And in spite of my weakness, God can overcome my weakness and still minister to people. So it's not like it's dependent upon me, but rather let me reach as many people as I can and have whatever isn't born from above be ironed out.
Right.
For the benefit of me and for the benefit of other people.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if I sit in a place where I feel ashamed by that, then I'll look at somebody and say, no, something wrong with you. You take things too personally. You're too sensitive. Right? Now what do you think they think when I do that? Does that sound like the voice of the stranger or the voice of the Father?
The stranger.
Yeah, you see how now I'm trying to uncover their nakedness? To try to hide my own nakedness? Or to try to hide the nakedness that I feel? You ever notice that? If you think somebody else has made you feel naked, you ever notice how you swing into action to try to make them feel naked then? What? And now two naked people talking. And listen, you ain't getting nowhere if both people who are in the conversation are both feeling naked. I promise you that. Because now everything you're doing is only fighting to cover yourself. And the other person is doing that too. You know what I'm saying? And now you're not really dialoguing. And you're not really talking about the real issues. Now you're talking about side issues. I mean, listen, it happens a lot in marriages. And just in personal relationships. That's where they go awry. Right? Where we feel that our nakedness is uncovered, and then to try to cover the nakedness we feel, we uncover their nakedness. Now, two people are naked there, and neither one of us are actually talking about the real issues. Now, all of our language is about clothing ourselves. All the other person's language is about them trying to clothe themselves. And we're not really talking about the whole real issue. Right? I know I'm using biblical language to describe this, but everybody tracking the nakedness is like the shame that you feel, right? Adam felt the shame, he felt naked, right? So many times in relationships we're interacting with one another, something that can make us feel naked. And then if we feel naked, the way we're going to respond is typically to point out the other person's nakedness. Now, neither one of the people are actually talking about the real issues or the issues that need to be resolved. They're both talking just to cover their own nakedness. And that increases the misunderstanding. It increases the tension, the frustration. And you ain't even really talking about the real thing. You're over here talking about nonsense now. And you don't even know how. I mean, when I think back to every fight I've ever had with my wife, it was all about nonsense. Stupidity. Stuff that didn't even matter. I mean, like our greatest fights were about stuff that didn't even matter, man. Right? I mean, I'm just being honest. And boy, I'm telling you, the way some of them escalate. I mean, you guys know me, I'm not exactly quiet. Well, Becky's Italian. I know she walks around all sweet, and Becky is the sweetest person you ever met. But she grew up in a house of... She is all Italian, I promise you. And so if Becky feels smacked in the face, I promise you, man, she looks about as intense as me. Now you get both her and I engaged in a fight.
You know what's interesting is how the Spirit enables you to, from